Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another live streaming of basic transfer pricing. And tonight, I would like to say thank you po sa ating mga subscribers. Umabot na tayo ng 714 subscribers. No? Thank you very much. And our topic for tonight is about how to make transfer pricing analysis. And also, we will discuss the case of Norske Shell versus the Norwegian Supreme Court. Ano po yung issue doon sa case na i-discuss natin tonight? It's about the charging of the research and development cost against the Norske Shell, wherein the tax authority ng Norway dinisallow niya yung ibang cost ng research and development because mas malaking portion doon is charged to Norske Shell in Norway, when in fact it benefits the group worldwide, no? So binawasan ng Norwegian tax authority yung claim na research and development of Shell in Norway, no? Okay, but before that, we will discuss about comparability, no? What is comparability? Comparability is a process of comparing, no, two or more things in order to determine its equivalence or its similarities. Why? Because this is in relation to our study with the related party transactions or the arm's length principle, no? The application of the arm's length principle in the financial and commercial transactions of related parties. So ano po yung sinasabi dito? For the arm's length principle, which is the internationally accepted principle in transfer pricing, requires that the financial and commercial transactions of the related parties should be similar with that of the independent parties. Why? Because the independent parties, transactions between independent parties are the real transactions because it has no element of control. And related party transactions are influenced by the control of the parties between them, no? On the transaction or agreements between them. While that transactions between independent parties are influenced only by the market forces. No, there is no influence or control between the independent parties. So the real transactions, according to the arm's length principle, is the real transactions. That's why, for tax purposes, the treatment or the pricing of goods and services between related parties should be similar or at par with that of the independent parties. So, since sinasabi na natin is similar, so what are we going to do? We have to compare so that we know if those pricing of goods or services are really similar. So, what are we going to do? We have to compare, no? And sabi nga ng transfer pricing that comparability analysis, no? We have to analyze if the independent transactions and the related party transactions are similar. So what are we going to do? We have to compare. So in comparing, we have to find comparables or those companies which are operating the same functions with the company that we are trying to make a transfer pricing analysis, no? So comparability analysis is the heart of transfer pricing, without which we do not know, we cannot determine if the transactions of the related parties are arm's length, no? Okay. So if we try to look back in the Philippines, we have Revenue Regulations 2013, dated January 2013, which provides the guidelines, the transfer pricing guidelines here in the Philippines, no? And Section 6 of that guideline, no, the RR 2-2013, explains about the concept of comparability. What is comparability? No? So it provides here that the arm's length principle is based on a comparison of the prices at margins adopted or obtained by related parties with those adopted or obtained by independent parties engaged in similar transactions. So, dapat similar ang transactions, otherwise you cannot compare, no? If they have unrelated transactions or not similar transactions. For such price or margin comparisons to be meaningful, all economically relevant characteristics. So the characteristics, the comparability factors are very important when you compare. No? So all economically relevant characteristics of the situations being compared should be sufficiently similar, no? Sufficiently similar so that number one, none of the differences, if any, between the situations being compared can materially affect the price or margin being compared. So, kung may differences man sila, it cannot, that differences will not materially affect the price or margin being compared. No? Or, halimbawa, meron naman silang differences, reasonably accurate adjustments can be made to eliminate the effect of any such differences. Halimbawa, magkaiba sila ng assets, magkaiba sila ng working capital. So, in that case, pwede siyang i-adjust to make them similar. No? Paano mo gagawin yun? Of course, you have to assign value to the differences in working capital. Either you have to deduct or make some adjustment in terms of interest, no, in terms of investment, so that for the sake of working capital, you can make the two comparative. No? So what are the factors affecting comparability? And these are very important. No? So in the study of transfer pricing, you have to memorize the 5 comparability factors. No? Why? Because these 5 comparability factors, you have to study this. When you make a transfer pricing analysis or when you compare, you have to apply all these factors. You have to analyze all these factors so that you will know if the transactions between related parties and independent parties are the same or similar. No? So, for the factors that affects comparability, we start with the characteristic of goods, services, or intangible properties. Why? Because if the goods or services have different characteristics, then they are not comparable. You have to eliminate, no, the comparables. And also, in making a comparability analysis, when you look for the comparables, meaning comparables, we're talking about companies that you are going to compare with that of the tested party or with that of the company that you are going to make transfer pricing analysis. No? So you compare the two companies. And when we say comparables, we have to look for the comparables or usually companies who are players in the same industry. No? Because companies are players, no, in the same industry in the market, so they know each other. So that when you make a transfer pricing analysis and when you look for companies to compare with the company that you are going to make a comparability analysis or your tested party, then you can always refer to their competitors. No? So, who are the major players in the industry? Then you compare. You use them as your comparable. And in choosing a comparables, we have internal comparables and also external comparables. So when we say external comparables, we can always make use of the pricing made between 2 independent parties. No? So they are the ones having such financial and commercial transactions. Hindi tayo maka-illustrate. Pero hindi bali na, okay na lang. Kasi mayroon pala kaming sa likod, no? Happy 16,000 subscribers na po tayo doon sa isang natin, YouTube channel, no? Yung tax training natin. We already have reached the 16,000 subscribers. So thank you very much po. Yung dito naman sa atin, we only have 714 subscribers, but still counting, no? Nadadagdagan naman araw-araw. Okay. So going back to the how to make a comparability analysis, then um, you have to look for the comparables, no, or companies that you are going to compare with that of the company that you are doing the analysis. Also, in finding companies to compare, you have to look for the internal comparables or the external comparables. When we say external comparables, we mean companies that are not in any way related. No, they have consummated the transactions between them, similar with that the transactions that we are proving that it is arm's length. No, so those internal or external comparables have no relationship or link whatever to the transactions that the tested party have. When we uh, speak of internal comparables, which is the opposite of the external comparables, the internal comparables are companies which have which are independent companies but having relationship or link or somehow has a transactions with the related parties, no? Independent parties sila, third parties, pero may transaction sila with the related parties. So pagka may transaction sila with the related parties, pero third parties sila, pwede natin silang gawin, but they are called internal comparables. Why? Because they have a link or relationship as a customer or as client of the tested party. That's why we call them internal comparables, no? So when looking for the companies to compare, we have the external comparable and the internal comparables, no? The most controversial case in transfer pricing is that of the GlaxoSmithKline, no, versus the ERA or the Canadian Revenue Agency. In that case, they use internal comparables. Why? Because they make comparison with the price of the active ingredient of Santac sold between a related party and another subsidiaries in Europe. Compare it with the price of the active ingredient of Santac sold by another subsidiary to its related party in Canada. No, so they are uh, internal comparables at that. No? And it was very effective. No? It was the most controversial case in transfer pricing, wherein the court resolved that GlaxoSmithKline should pay the revenue tax authority of Canada 3.1 billion. No? So in that case, that was the most controversial case in transfer pricing. So we have the internal comparables and we have the external comparables. So how are we going to compare them? So we have to compare the apply the 5 comparability factors, and we have the number 1 characteristic of goods, services, or intangible properties. Why? Very important po yung characteristics or the nature, because if the companies, the internal or the external comparables that we have, if they have a different characteristics with that of the goods or services of these related parties, then they are not comparable and we have to reject or eliminate them. No? So just like what we post in the Facebook, no, na we have completed already 2 transfer pricing analysis report. And for all your information, sobrang sakit na ng mata ko, no? Para na siyang namamaga, no? So ganun pala 'yun pag naka-ano ka, babad sa computer, no? Sobrang sakit na. Mamaga yung mata ko. But anyway, we have 13, no, engagement for the transfer pricing analysis report. So far, the most number I experienced during my encounter with transfer pricing. So this is the most. But we have layout na lahat. And we have delivered at least 3 na, no? Kasama na yung kay, yung isa. Hari, yung ginawa natin ng 1709 na. So pang ano na yun, pang ngatlo, although for the 1709 form lang. But for others, talagang sobrang hirap, no? But at least natapos natin. At yung iba, mabilis na lang, no? Final, ano na rin, final stage na rin, no? And the most, for your information, the most difficult when you compare or when you make a transfer pricing analysis is the choice of comparables because sometimes you have to reject. And sometimes meron nga akong isang case dyan, i-reject mo lahat. No? I-reject mo lahat. Oh, because in making a comparability analysis, we have to consult also the RAMO. I consult the RAMO, yung RAMO 1-2019. No? Why? Because that is the very purpose why you have the transfer pricing analysis report. And if it does not conform with the requirement of the RAMO, then walang silbi, no? Your transfer pricing analysis report defeats the purpose. Okay. So we have the first factor, characteristics or nature of the goods and services, or tangible or intangible, no? So just a reminder, siguro sa Wednesday, you have to talk about intangibles as you present it in your financial statements, no? Because my experience, there are so many companies that are not recognizing or reporting intangibles in their financial statements. And for your information, if you fail to report, no, I have read just recently, itong i-discuss ko sa inyo na mga cases, pero I have read yung mga related cases, no, citations on the case also, that if the intangibles are not reflected in the financial statements, then your financial statements are misstated. Much more so if you make a transfer pricing analysis report, no? So how can you make a transfer pricing analysis report and then talk about intangibles when the intangibles are not even reflected in your financial statements, no? So yun ang mahirap. That's why I really have to campaign for the CPAs and for the accountants that they have to include the intangible assets in their financial statements, no? So in the balance sheet and also in the notes to financial statements. In the balance sheet, they have to disclose what are the intangible assets. Example, the patents, licenses, manufacturing processes, logo, trademarks, no, licenses, software like computer. They have to reflect that in their financial statement as intangibles and then amortized, no? Why? Because if you make a transfer pricing analysis and there's no intangibles in the financial statement, then it's very difficult, no? Kasi hindi mag-reconcile your transfer pricing analysis report and that of the financial statements. So how are you going to disclose the intangibles in your financial statement? First, you have to report it in the balance sheet, and then the second is you have to disclose it in the notes to financial statements. So in that case, kumpleto yung disclosures mo, no? Like halimbawa, a manufacturing company with branded products. No, you cannot say that they don't have intangibles because they have branded products, and that brand products that they carry, the one they are manufacturing, they are exploiting the brand, no? The name, and you have to value it in your balance sheet, no? Whether registered or not, whether protected or not. The secret formula for those who are engaged also in manufacturing. So the moment you are a manufacturing company, it is a must that you report intangibles in your financial statement, no? So the next, after the characteristics and nature of goods and services, whether tangible or intangible, the next factor that you are going to compare is that analysis of functions, risk, and assets, no? First, you have to compare the functions, though these companies have different functions, because if they have different functions, then you have to eliminate, you have to reject it because they are not comparable, no? Example, the one is a manufacturing company, and then the other one is a service company. Of course, you cannot compare them even if you make some adjustment, no? Because the functions are different, so you cannot compare. So that's analysis of functions. How about risk? The risk um, encountered or experienced by the companies, no? Or assumed assumed risk of the company you have to compare also. Just like halimbawa, they are both a manufacturing company, but one of the company is just a toll manufacturer, so with less risk. Why? Because the toll manufacturer perform only services, and the toll manufacturing company does not own raw materials, so that the risk of obsolescence, the risk of theft, the risk of unsold or expired uh, manufactured goods, none for the toll manufacturer. No? So the toll manufacturer has less risk compared to the full-fledged manufacturer. Why? The full-fledged manufacturer owns the raw materials, the goods in process, and the finished goods. And then they have to distribute the products, and then they have to sell their products. So they all have assumed the risk along the way from the purchasing of raw materials up to the distribution and selling of their goods. No? Okay, so uh, you can compare the functions. If they have the same functions, then they are comparable. You have to compare the risk. If they have the same risk, then they are comparable. Or if they don't have the same risk, but you can make adjustment on the risk they assume, then it can be, no? You can proceed with, you can accept it as your comparable, no? What are the example of risk adjustment? Example, the companies are both distributor, no, of manufactured products. They are subsidiaries. And then the comparable has the price of A is, for the same product, is 800 pesos. And then the price of B is 600 pesos. So you ask, why is it that the other is 800, the other is 600? What is the difference? Then you can discover that the difference in the price is the assumption of risk. No? Why? Because the one who sold the goods at 600 don't have the risk, no? Don't assume any risk. While the one who sold the product at 800 assume the risk. So, meaning for the 200 difference, there is that assumption of risk. That's why the other have not. So, if you have to make a comparability adjustment, then you adjust at the price of 200, and then you explain why there is that difference. And upon your analysis, that difference is due to assumption of risk, no? Halimbawa, yung nagbenta ng 600, no? Wala siyang warranty risk, no? The other has a warranty risk. Ano yung warranty risk? Warranty that the goods is not defective, or warranty that the goods is of good condition. In case of defective goods, the distributor is liable, no? So the distributor will assume the risk. So in that case, the distributor, yung A na 800, sold the product at 800 because it has to assume the risk of warranty, no? So that's the difference. So once you have discovered or analyzed what's the difference between them, and that is the assumption of risk, then you can adjust the transactions by 200 and make them similar. Then proceed. They are already comparable, no? Another is the assets, no? So analysis of functions, assets, and risk, no? So assets are also very important. Why? Because when you compare the two transactions, the other has 1 million assets and the other has 100 million assets, then you have to adjust. Why? You have to adjust because, of course, the one with the most assets employed are have an influence on the price of its goods or services, no? So you discover or you analyze what is the reason, what are the factors, no? So ano yan? Anong reason? Why is it that this one has many assets? And whether those assets are related to the operation. Why? Because, for example, the other company has 100 million assets, the other is 1 million assets engaged in manufacturing company. The other one with 100 million assets are investment, no? Not related to the manufacturing functions niya. So anong gagawin mo? You have to adjust the 100 million assets as being not in connection or not relevant to the manufacturing companies. So you have to adjust. No? Okay. So that is the second factor, the analysis of functions, assets, and risks that you are going to compare. And then yung next natin is comparability analysis that you are going to compare is the commercial and economic circumstances or the economic conditions. So when you compare the two transactions, you have to see to it that they are on a same economic conditions. Halimbawa, the economic conditions of the Philippines before the COVID and the economic conditions of the Philippines during the COVID. Of course, for the value of goods and services at that time or during that time, it is very important to consider. Why? Because of the adverse economic condition. No? And in fact, there are so many companies who lost a lot of money during that time. No? So those are the commercial and economic conditions. So when you compare the economic conditions during the pandemic, then compare it with the other party who also experienced the same during the pandemic, no? So I just talked to my client kanina, no? Na sabi ko, why not declare net loss? Because net loss now can be claimed for 5 years. Unlike the NOLCO, the net operating loss that you can claim only for 3 years and then it will expire. So due to pandemic, no, we have extended, the BAR extended the claim of loss. And what is that claim of loss? During the pandemic, you can claim it for the next 5 years. It will not expire, no? But of course, there are industries that are not losing during the pandemic. Those who are losing are those industries which has been closed, just like transportation, no, just like hotel and restaurant, no, so no more. So they are really lost. But how about those who are manufacturing of foods, manufacturing of pharmaceutical products? They are not affected adversely by the pandemic. Yung iba pa nga, lumaki pa yung sales, especially those na nag-i-import ng mga mask, no? Hot cake at saka mga alcohol. Hot cake na huwag kakawalaan pa during the pandemic. Okay? So that commercial and economic circumstances should also be considered when you make a transfer pricing analysis. Okay. We also have to consider the business strategies, no? So what are the business strategies that you're going to consider? No? If the company are doing some strategies in order to promote its sales or in order to have increase this share in the market, no? So they are doing some business strategies by lowering down their prices or by having a business portfolio, no? Or yung value added to their some products or value added to their services. So they are embarking on some strategies in order to gain market share. No? So in that case, you can always look at the effect of the business strategies, the effect to the gross profit margin and other ratios. No? And then aside from the business strategies, we also have the fifth comparability factors, the contractual terms. No? Actually, yung case that we are going to study mamaya, ito yung sa Norske Shell versus the Norwegian Supreme Court. No? It makes citation with the case of Glencore, no? Yung Commissioner of Internal Revenue nila or the ATO. Australian Tax Office versus the Glencore, no? It makes citation on that case. At ano yung rationale of that case? It's all about contracts, no? Why is it the tax authority is questioning why is it that you enter into a contract which is very detrimental to the company, no? Na pwede naman siyang kumita. Bakit pa pumasok sa isang kontrata wherein the company will suffer loss, no? So those are business strategies and contractual terms. So there are 5 comparability factors. We have to compare or analyze the characteristics or nature of the goods and services, whether tangible or intangible, no? So when we say tangible, it has a physical characteristics. When we say intangible, it has no physical attributes. It cannot be seen, it cannot be touched, but it is very valuable, no? Parang sa digitized economy na rin natin na digital. You cannot, just like me talking now, no? I cannot touch, I cannot see my audience, no? They are intangibles. Why? Walang physical attributes, walang physical, only virtual, no? Nandyan lang. Sila, Banji pala, ano, i-chat mo? Sige. Ilan yung viewers natin?
6 viewers po.
Okay, so ano tayo sa mga viewers natin? Shout out po, no? We're still discussing about how to make comparability analysis. Summarize natin yan mamaya, how to make comparability analysis. And I will still discuss to you also the process, no? Kasi ang dinidiscuss ko pa lang sa inyo ngayon is the comparability factors. How you make comparability analysis. Nasabi ko sa inyo, very, very crucial in making a transfer pricing study. Why? Kasi the heart of transfer pricing is in comparability analysis, no? How you analyze and compare the transactions between related parties and that of the independent parties. Okay. So, for the provision of comparability analysis, that is Section 6 of the Revenue Regulations 2-2013 in the Philippines, no? So, we will try to look at the guidelines ng RR 2-2013 kung papaano, what are the steps in making a comparability analysis, no? Kasi meron siyang sinasabi na comparability analysis. How do we compare, no? So, yun talaga ang pinaka-importante. How do you compare? Okay. So, it has a relevance on the principle of the arm's length principle, wherein you have to prove that the transactions of the related parties are arm's length. And if you are tasked to prove that the transactions of the related parties are similar with that of the independent parties, then you make, you compare, and then you make a comparability analysis, no? So in making a comparability analysis, RR 2-2013 gives us 3 steps, no? So step 1, conduct a comparability analysis. Step 2, identify the tested party and the appropriate transfer pricing method, no? So have you to identify the tested party and the appropriate transfer pricing method. I-text mo pa rin pala si Sir Eugene. Manood siya, no? So that he will learn also, no? So step 3, determine the arm's length results, no? So what is the arm's length results? Once you conduct a comparability analysis and then you identify the tested party, you have chosen the right transfer pricing method, then you can now determine the arm's length results, no? In the case also, in my case, when I do transfer pricing analysis and comparability analysis, I make use also of the guidelines set in RAMO 1-2019, which is the transfer pricing guidelines o the transfer pricing guidelines ng BAR, no? So, determine the arm's length results. That is step 3. No? So, as a way of i-summarize natin, no? So, step 1, conduct a comparability analysis. Step 2, identify the tested party and the appropriate transfer pricing method used, no? And then step 3, determine the arm's length results. No? So, yan po yung steps ng RR2-2013. I would like to discuss also to you the comparability analysis ng OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines. No? Ito po yung OECD Transfer Pricing Guidelines. This is the basis ng mga transfer pricing laws natin. No? So, for the comparability analysis po natin, what are the steps? No? So, let's see. Comparability analysis. Okay. So, under step 3, under chapter 3 of the comparability analysis, there are 9 steps, no? Typical process or 9 steps that the guidance or the OECD transfer pricing guidelines natin mention about the steps, no? So the typical process for OECD transfer pricing guidelines in making a comparability analysis, step 1, determination of years to be covered, no? So step 1 nila, ano ba yung years to be covered? But here in the Philippines, since the regular audit covers only one taxable year, then during the issuance of the letter of authority to audit the taxpayers in a one taxable period, it also includes the transfer pricing audit. No? So what happened? The frequency or the coverage of the transfer pricing audit is also one taxable year. No? Kaya yung determination of years to be covered, it is only one taxable year here in the Philippines. No? In other countries, then, they have a different legislation. Step 2, broad-based analysis of the taxpayer circumstances. Ano itong mga broad-based analysis of the taxpayer circumstances? The functions, the economic conditions. So you go back to the 5 comparability factors, no? So the functions, the economic conditions of the tested party of the company, no? And then step 3, understanding the controlled transactions under examination. So what are the controlled transactions under the examination? Based in particular on a functional analysis. Ano tong functional analysis? We discover or we study the functions of the company. And what are the example of functions? Functions can be manufacturing, can be advertising, can be provision of services, no? Can be reselling, merchandising, or whatever industry you are in, no? So kasama yan sa controlled transactions under examination based on functional analysis, no? So you have to discover what are the functions of the company. At usually, saan nyo po yan makikita yung functions? In the registration with the SEC, no, nakalagay yan doon sa primary and secondary objectives. And then, ano pa, nakalagay yan doon sa classification of the taxpayer, doon sa kanyang mayor's permit and barangay permit, no? Or, nakalagay na yan sa business name pa lang niya sa DTI. And then, saan mo pa siya makita? Sa COR, no? Sa certificate of registration niya with the BIR. Okay. So you can determine the functions, no? Functional analysis, in order to choose the tested party. No? The tested party, sino dapat ang mandatory na may tested party? Under the 3 methods. And what are these methods that the tested party are required? The cost plus method, the resale price method, and the transactional net margin method. The comparable and controlled price method, hindi na kailangan tested party. So with the profit split, no? Okay. In order to choose the tested party where needed, because in some cases, hindi na rin kailangan yung tested party. The most appropriate transfer pricing method to the circumstances of the case, the financial indicator that will be tested in the case of a transactional profit method and to identify the significant comparability factors that should be taken into account. No? So yun po yung step 3 ng typical process of the comparability analysis. And as I told you, we have 9 steps. No? So step 4, review of existing internal comparables. So what are the internal comparables existing? You have to review. And then step 5, determination of available sources of information on external comparables, where such external comparables are needed, taking into account their relative reliability. No? So yung determination of the available information, some companies are rejected or eliminated from the list of comparables, and the reason is there is no available information. No? Okay, step 6, selection of the most appropriate transfer pricing method and, depending on the method, determination of the relevant financial indicator. No, ano yung mga financial indicator? Determination of the relevant net profit indicator, no, in case of transactional net margin method. Kasi ang transactional net margin method make use of the net margin or the net income. No? So you have to uh, select the most appropriate transfer pricing method. And then step 7, identification of potential comparables, determining the K characteristic to be met by any uncontrolled transactions in order to be regarded as potentially comparable. No? So based on the relevant factors identified in step 3 and in accordance with the comparability factors set forth at section D 1 of chapter 1. No? So section D1 of chapter 1. And then we have step 8, determination of and making comparability adjustments where appropriate. No? So ito yung determination and making comparability adjustments where appropriate. And then step 9, we have interpretation and use of data collected or determination of the arm's length remuneration. No? So yun. Ano tong interpretation and use of data collected, determination of the arm's length remuneration? You make now the adjustment. Because after having the comparability analysis, then you make the comparability adjustment. And that is already the result of your transfer pricing audit. And what happened in the comparability adjustment? Either the amount or the claim of expenses or the price is reduced or increased, no, depending on the circumstances of the case. Okay. So those are the typical process of making a comparability analysis. And to summarize, we have step number 1, no, as provided for in the guidance of the OECD. Step number 1, we have determination of years to be covered. Step 2, broad-based analysis of the taxpayer circumstances. Step 3, we have understanding the controlled transactions and under examination based in particular on a functional analysis in order to choose the tested party where needed, the most appropriate transfer pricing method to the circumstances of the case, the financial indicator that will be tested in the case of transactional profit method, and to identify the significant comparability factors that should be taken into account. Step 4, review of existing internal comparables, if any. Step 5, determination of available sources of information on external comparables, where such external comparables are needed, taking into account their relative reliability. No? Dapat, kasi when you gather information, they should be reliable. Step 6, selection of the most appropriate transfer pricing method and, depending on the method, determination of the relevant financial indicator. No? So determination of the relevant net profit indicator in case of a transactional net margin method. No? I have read one case na ang case filed by the taxpayer is to inhibit the court to use information which are gathered, no, or were just taken from their files, no? Parang ninakaw lang, no? It was just stolen in the files of the taxpayer. And here it is, it was used by the tax authority. And the taxpayer filed a case in court to inhibit the tax authority to use the stolen documents, no, from them. And in the Philippines, so sa rule natin sa evidence, those who evidence that are taken out of a poisonous tree or talagang illegal yung pagkagawa cannot be used as evidence in court, no? But in that case, it becomes irrelevant later on, no? It was not questioned. So step 6, selection of the most appropriate transfer pricing method, and depending on the method, determination of the relevant financial indicator. So transfer pricing method are very important, and we have discussed the how to choose the method, no, the best transfer pricing method. That, as I told you in our previous discussion, for the choice of the transfer pricing method, the law or the guidelines RR2-2013 requires that we have to recommend the best method, or what we call as the best method rule. We have to recommend the best method but apply all the methods, no? And I have read also one transfer pricing case that the court dismissed the case, no, in favor of the taxpayer, because the tax authority never never have the chance or never present transfer pricing method or apply the transfer pricing method in the case, no? Ito lang latest na ano ko, I'm very particular when I read case now. I'm very particular of the documentation. Why? Because the role of documentation are the essential or the very crucial or very important if you are a tax consultant, no? Kasi how can you advise your clients if you don't know about documentation? So documentation are very important, and it plays a crucial role whether the case, the transfer pricing case, will be resolved in favor of the client or in favor of the tax authority, no? So in that case, it was dismissed in favor of the taxpayer because the tax authority don't apply any transfer pricing method in the transfer pricing case, no? And just recently, I read a case that when the court decided the case, the dissenting opinion requires also that the court should make its own transfer pricing analysis, no? That's why sabi ko it's a good avenue also of the tax practitioner to make this transfer pricing as additional avenue for service offered, especially to the authority or to the court, no? Kasi especially if the court will also require transfer pricing analysis, because the justice in that case also recommend that the court has to make its own transfer pricing analysis, no? So in that case, sinong magbabayad? Because the transfer pricing analysis are very expensive, no? So who will pay for the cost? Sa mga cases, no, sa Court of Tax Appeal natin and even in the Supreme Court, the cost will be against those or the one who will lose the case, siya magbabayad ng cost, no? Karamihan. Okay. So I have discussed to you the comparability analysis. So when we compare, we have to look for the comparables, and that comparables can be internal or external comparables. And once we have found those, how are we going to look for the comparables? Sa akin ha, we are now doing this transfer pricing analysis. We find comparables. First, dinedetermine namin yung functions ng company, no? And then we look for comparables having the same functions with that company or having the same industry with that of the tested party or for the company. No? So once we have identified the companies, we will obtain copies of the financial statements because that is the very, very essential source of information of the related parties. No? So we have to request it from the SEC or the Securities and Exchange Commission, and there is a fee for every financial statement, and that is 500 pesos, no? And minsan matagal pa. But since kailangan, because there is a deadline, that's why we have to be very ano naman yung allowance, you have to make an allowance in your study. Ako at least I ask for 60 days, no? Kasi kailangan natin yun because if there are some delay or there are some difficulties in the gathering of information, then 60 days I think is already enough, no? Okay, so I have discussed to you the comparability analysis, how to make a comparability analysis. You may choose between the 3 steps required by the RR2-2013 coming from the BAR or the Tax Authority of the Philippines, or you can also use the 9-step process of the OECD transfer pricing guidance. No? So kung saan kayo convenient. Kasi ang sa OECD, very specific, no? Parang may step by step ka na guide. Sa RR2013, it is only a 3-step process, pero ang scope malawak pagdating sa every step, no? Every steps of the analysis malalawak. Parang kinlaster lang nila doon yung ginawa ng OECD na 9-step process. Okay? Walang shoutout?
May shoutout tayo, madam.
Oh, sige. Sino?
Shoutout kay Sir Eugene Cruz. Good evening daw.
Oh, magaling na siya. No? Magaling na siya. Hopefully, hindi crucial kasi filing season, bawal magkasakit ngayon. No? Okay, wala na?
Meron pa ma'am shoutout din po kay Mark Chester.
Oh.
Sabi niya ma'am, maraming salamat po sa live video niyo. Nag-aspire po ako na maging accountant balang araw.
Oh, very good. No, you start it right. And you know, transfer pricing will be there. Matagal nyo pa ito pakinabangan. Why? Because transfer pricing is a very important tool in taxation. No, and even yung mga international tax policy makers natin, hindi binibitawan ng transfer pricing. No? Even in our digitized economy, in our taxation without borders, no? In our investigation or our tax officers without borders, nandyan pa rin yung transfer pricing. Why? Because transfer pricing is economic taxation. You deal with the activity of the taxpayers. That's why it's very important. Siguro, ang mangyayari lang sa transfer pricing, the law itself will be enhanced, but the arm's length principle is still there and being adhered to. No? So, nandyan pa rin yung transfer pricing. Okay?
Meron pa ma'am shoutout din po kay Sir Michael Sano. Good evening po.
Wow. Sir Michael Sano. And as a way of saying thank you pala, no, for our subscribers, i-post mo nga dyan, Ari, for yung 730 natin na subscribers, yung gusto ng transfer pricing book natin, mag-chat lang sila dun sa natin, sa YouTube channel natin, and we will send you the book for free, pero yung charges, yung delivery charges, sa inyo na. No? So, that is our way of saying thank you sa mga subscribers natin. And then, meron pa?
Wala po. Maraming salamat daw, sabi ni Mark Chester.
Okay, sige. Break lang ako sandali ha, ng 3 minutes before I proceed with the discussion of the case. Sindi mo sandali yung aircon kasi mainit. Okay. Okay, so our case is that we're going to discuss is the Norwegian Supreme Court, no, versus the Norske Shell, no? Okay, so in this case, for the background of the case, no, actually this is a case about Shell at kilala naman natin kung ano itong Shell, no. This is the a company that deals with the extraction or exploration of petroleum products, no? So this is a case of Shell na exploring or exploiting this petroleum in Norway, no? So the case concerns the validity of a decision from the appeals board for petroleum tax on the tax assessment of Norske Shell for the income years 2007 to 2012. So, take note ha, sa mga gumagawa ng transfer pricing analysis, usually, ang transfer pricing analysis ng ibang bansa is usually 5 years, no? Dito lang yan sa atin na 1 year lang because it follows with the 1-year taxable audit policy ng Pilipinas. Pero sa iba, when they do a transfer pricing analysis, may separate division sila just like in Malaysia. Malaysian Tax Authority nila na meron silang separate na international tax division. At that group is the one doing the transfer pricing audit, no? So, usually 5 years po yung coverage. No? So, in this case, the case involved, the period covered is 5 years, 2007 to 2012. 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 6 years, no? Kasi 2007 to 2012. So, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, no? So, by the judgment of the Court of Appeal, it has been legally decided kasi, di ba, ang case is already in the Supreme Court. So, nanggaling na siya sa lower court and nanggaling na siya sa Court of Tax Appeal, no? Court of Appeal sa kanila. So, it has been legally decided that there is a basis for a discretionary supplement to the company's income based on the fact that cost for research and development in Norway should have been distributed within the Shell Group, no? Ang sabi ko nga sa inyo kanina, ano ba itong case na to? This is about the disallowance of the tax authority in Norway about the research and development expense claimed by Norske Shell, wherein, according to the tax authority in Norway, the research and development that has been incurred, no, the cost that has been incurred for the research and development benefits also other members of the group, which are also Shell, na hindi lang sa Norway, all over the world. That's why, according to the Norwegian tax authority, they should also have a share in the cost of the research and development. Kasi nakikinabang sila eh. So, what happened in this case, ni-reallocate the Norwegian Tax Authority yung research and development cost to other Shell, members of the Shell group. So what happened? When you allocate portion of the expenses and then dadalhin mo yan doon sa iba, then you deduct sa amount in you reduce the amount of the research and development cost. Of course, anong effect nun? It will increase the taxable income, no? So in this case, there is a tax deficiency. Okay. So the question before the Supreme Court is whether this supplement can also cover the part of that cost that are charged to its Norske Shell licensed partners in extraction projects on the Norwegian shelf. Okay, so yun yung question nila, kung tuloy ba yun o ano ba yung ginawa ng tax authority na i-charge niya yung cost sa ibang partners. no? The Shell Group is among the world's largest, no? So ito na yung, di ba, sabi natin when you make a comparability analysis, you have to discover, or you have to explore what are the functions or what is the company, no, the profile of the company. So the Shell Group is among the world's largest in oil and gas. That's why when I make a transfer pricing analysis, I always ask the client to describe even their milestone, ever their mission and mission, all about the company. No, you have to be very specific. The Shell Group is among the world's largest in oil and gas, with operations in many countries. AS Norwe's Shell, hereinafter Norske Shell, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the group. No? Ito pa pala ang isang reason if we want to reject the comparables, meaning those companies na hindi natin dapat gawin na comparable, those companies which are wholly owned subsidiaries. Why? Because if you compare a related party to another related parties, then it defeats the purpose of the arm's length principle. So ano dapat? Independent party compare with that of the related parties. That's why wholly owned subsidiaries should be rejected when you make a transfer pricing analysis. No? So the Shell Group is among the world's largest in oil and gas, with operations in many countries. AS Norske Shell, hereinafter Norske Shell, is a wholly owned subsidiary of the group. The company conducts activities related to exploration and extraction of petroleum on the Norwegian continental shelf and is in that connection taxable under the Petroleum Tax Act. No? Kasi bakit? May Petroleum Tax Act sila sa Norway. Norske Shell is the licensee and operator of several large Norwegian extraction projects. No? So when you make an analysis, pag nakita mo na licensee siya, so there is already intangible. That's why intangibles are very important. No? Number 4, the extraction projects take place in collaboration between several petroleum companies. No? The relationship between the various licensees is regulated by state-established agreements. No, state-established agreements meaning they are regulated by the state. Patayin mo na yung aircon, masakit sa mata. Okay. Which includes a cooperation agreement and an accounting agreement. No? So, state-established agreement siya. Ibig sabihin, provided by the state, regulated by the state. So, kasama na doon yung cooperation agreement and also the accounting agreement. Shell Technologies Norway was previously a wholly owned subsidiary of Norske Shell. The research and development activities to which this case relates were to a large extent conducted through this company, no? Yung Shell Technologies Norway. However, the parties agree that in the case here, there is no reason to distinguish between the two companies. So, when the term Norwegian Shell in the following, it can therefore also include Shell Technologies or Norway AS, no? So the Shell Group conducts extensive research activities. The majority of the group's research related to extraction activities takes place in the Dutch Shell International Exploration and Production BV, no? Yan yung SIAP, no? Anong tawag dyan? Shell International Exploration and Production. The cost of applied research are distributed to the various companies that conduct extraction activities according to the distribution K, that is to reflect the individual companies' assumed benefit from the research. Kasi di ba sa guidelines natin sa research and development, if that is a group effort, then para maging arm's length yung group effort na yan for the research and development. So, para maging arm's length siya, the contribution of the party to the research and development will commensurate also the benefits that that company receive, no? So kung magkano yung contribute mo, dapat ganun din yung benefits mo. Hindi pwede yung you contribute and then wala kang benefits or mas lesser yung benefits mo. So in terms of money, if you contribute 1 million, dapat the benefits that you receive also from that project is also 1 million, no? Kasi hindi siya maging arm's length if you contribute 1 million and then yung benefits receive mo is only 300,000. No? So, the companies assume benefit from the research. So dapat ano siya, distributed, no? The principles for cost allocation are regulated in a separate agreement, the SIEP agreement. Pursuant to this agreement, Norske Shell in the period 2007 to 2012 paid an annual amount in the order of Norwegian kron, no? 46, yan ang pera ng Norway, no? Norwegian kron. 46 to 100 million to participate in the Shell International Exploration and Production. No? Imagine, 46 to 100 million. So, meaning, talagang very profitable yung industry na yan. No? To participate in the SIEP scheme. This corresponds to 5 to 6% of the total SIEP cost. Norwegian Shell participates in a number of projects with research collaboration that are connected to Norway. Many of these under the auspices of the Research Council of Norway. The cost for research in Norway in the relevant period was covered by Norske Shell without any division between different shell companies according to the distribution K in the SIEP agreement or in any other way. Ito na, tandaan nyo ha. If there is an agreement or if there is a contract, no? See to it, no? Ito, sabi ng OECD na, this is OECD telling us during my advanced study in transfer pricing with the OECD, and that is the extractive industry, no? Ano sabi ng OECD? Be sure that when you try to look at the contracts, in making an audit, in making an analysis, be sure that each party adheres to the provision of the contract, no? Kasi tingnan nyo dito, the agreement in the allocation or in the division of cost, no, is state regulated, no? And in this case, the Norwegian Shell, no, that participates in the number of projects with research collaboration that are connected to Norway, no? So many of these under the auspices of the Research Council of Norway. Kaya sabi natin, they are regulated, no, by the Research Council of Norway. The cost for research in Norway in the relevant period, yun yung 2007 to 2012, were covered by Norske Shell, no? Kinuha lahat ng Norske Shell without any division between different shell companies according to the distribution K in the SIEP agreement or in any other way. No? So yun siguro yung sabi na natin na blunder, no? Blunder din ng management. Why? Kasi it is already a state regulated. Tapos hindi nila inallocate to different shell companies. Sino lang nag-claim? The Norske Shell. No? Okay. Norwegian Shell. Hindi nila sinunod yung distribution agreement. So research in Norway is nevertheless covered by the SIEP collaboration in the sense that the results of the research efforts are available to companies in the Shell group and are considered an integral part of the SIEP system. No? So regulated na. Tapos hindi mo pa susundin, magkaroon ka talaga ng penalty. So in the tax assessment for the years 2007 to 2012, Norske Shell deducted all research and development costs. So lahat dinidak niya sa kanya. That had not already been covered through special contract research. So in addition, the company deducted its share of the Shell Group's joint research cost under the SIEP agreement. The annual deducted cost for research and development in Norway ranges from Norwegian kron 81 to 111 million. You can just imagine that, gaano kalaki, no? Okay, so by amending decisions from the Oil Tax Board for the income years 2007 and 2008 and by the tax assessment for the income years 2009-2012, the company's deduction of research and development costs in Norway was not accepted, no? So doon pa lang, no? Sa oil tax board pa lang, may tax assessment na. The refusal to deduct was justified on the grounds that the cost should have been distributed within the Shell Group according to the same K as in the SIEP agreement. However, the entry of deductions for the company's share of SIEP cost was not changed. No? So Norske Shell appealed the Oil Tax Board decision to the Petroleum Tax Appeals Board. Talagang lumalaban yung Norske Shell. No? So nag-appeal siya sa Oil Tax Board. No? The Appeals Board for Petroleum Tax issued a ruling in the case on 12 December 2016. The board unanimously concluded that the condition for discretion in accordance with the transfer pricing provision in the Tax Act, Section 13-1, were met. No? So in exercising its discretion, the tribunal agreed with the Oil Tax Office that it was correct to take as a starting point the total cost of the relevant research and development projects in Norway. The distribution within the Shell Group was to take place without any reduction for the part of this cost, which, in accordance with the accounting agreement, was charged to Norwegian Shell's licensed partners within the individual extraction projects. No? So, yan yung ang sabi ng Board for Petroleum Tax. No? The tribunal found that it could not be ruled out that there are circumstances which entail that the research activity in Norway to some extent gives Norwegian Shell greater economic benefits than what the Shell companies in other countries receive. However, there was disagreement, no, in the tribunal about the significance of this. On the basis of these benefits, the majority determined a reduction in the cost base of 10%. Ano mo to, Hari? Nandyan lang yan, sa may transfer pricing case. Yung Norwegian Supreme Court.
Ay, nakashow yan mo na.
Ha?
Nakashow yan. Yan ako yan. Si Ara ko kasi hindi sumagot.
Ano hindi sumagot?
Hindi, nakashow yan.
Okay. Sige. So the remaining costs were, according to the tribunal's decision, distributed according to the K that Shell uses within the SIEP cooperation. So as mentioned, the share for Norske Shell is 5 to 6%. 5 to 6% you're sharing. This meant that the equation was based on approximately 85% of the total research and development costs in Norway being distributed to the Shell companies in other countries. No? So 85%, so 15% lang yun doon sa Norway, 85% is distributed to the other Shell companies in other countries. Why? Kasi ang Shell is all over the world. Doon, dami nila. So Norske Shell brought the decision from the appeals board to the Oslo District Court for judicial review. So nag-appeal na naman yung Shell. The district court ruled on March 23, 2018 with the following conclusion. So ito naman yung observation ko, no? In some countries, napakabilis ng kanilang decision sa mga cases. But try to look at the decisions in transfer pricing. Matagal pa rin, no? Meaning talagang complicated yung mga issues in transfer pricing that the court itself cannot make hasten decision, no? Kasi hindi pwede na mabilis yung decision mo, especially yung mga complicated na tax case, no? In this case, bago siya nakarating sa Oslo District Court, it took 2 years kasi December 2016 siya nag-appeal sa Appeal Board for Petroleum Tax, no? So, 2 years din. In that case, matagal na rin yan, no? But sabi nga natin, because mahirap yung transfer pricing cases. So, is Norske Shell, sa pagdating na nila doon sa Oslo District Court, the state is acquitted, no? So, the Norske Shell pays, talo yung Norske Shell pays, Norwegian krone 224,750 in legal cost to the state through the Oil Tax Office within 2 weeks after the judgment has been announced, no? So Norske Shell appealed the judgment to the Borgarting Court of Appeals, no? So, nag-appeal na naman yung Shell, which on 26 September 2019, no? So, ilang years lang, 1 year. Kasi 2018, 1 year and a half. Kasi March 2018 and then September 2019 nasa Court of Appeal. Handed down in judgment with the following conclusion: the appeal is dismissed. No? So talo pa rin yung Shell. Kasi dinismiss yung appeal niya eh. In legal cost, before the Court of Appeals, A.S. Norske Shell pays 146,450, no? Kroner to state, kroner yan yung Norwegian kron, no? Yung pera ng Norway. To the state within 2 weeks from the announcement of the judgment. So nakadalawang talo na siya. Okay. So for both the District Court and the Court of Appeals, the case applied to all parts of the appeals board decision. Norwegian shall attack both the right to determine the income by discretion pursuant to Section 13-1 of the Tax Act and the further implementation of the discretionary determination. Parang sa atin, sa Pilipinas, arbitrary, no? Parang arbitrary determination. Sa Norway naman, anong sabi niya, discretionary determination, no? So Norske shall appeal the Court of Appeals judgment to the Supreme Court, no? Talagang dinala na sa Supreme Court. Hindi talaga siya convinced doon sa, kasi may ibang cases na yung taxpayer mismo doon pa lang sa lower court nagko-concede na, nagbabayad na. In this case, yung Shell talagang dinala pa niya doon sa Supreme Court. The appeal concerned the judgment in its entirety, no? Lahat ng cause of action niya sinama na niya sa Supreme Court in its entirety and included both the assessment of the evidence and the application of the law. Grabe, ang tindi, no? Bakit? Assessment of evidence. Pina-assess niya lahat na ang evidence at saka yung application of the law, no? So the Supreme Court Appeals Committee has allowed the appeal to be submitted with regard to the question of research and development. So ang question of evidence and question of law, no? So, anong issue dito? The question of research and development cost distributed to A.S. Norske Shell's licensed partners under the accounting agreement shall be included in determining the company's loss of income pursuant to Section 13-1. Otherwise, the appeal is not allowed to be advanced, no? So, ano yung kasama sa accounting agreement, no? Ito yung Norske Shell's licensed partners under the accounting agreement. May partner siya, so kasama siya, included in determining the company's loss of income. Okay. So the case has been considered at a remote meeting of temporary regulations of 27 March 2020. Lockdown na, ipinimik na to, no? Ng March 20. Number 459 on simplifications and measures within the justice sector to remedy the consequences of the outbreak of COVID-19, Section 2, and Temporary Act 26 May 2020, number 47, on adaptations in the process regulations as a result of the outbreak of COVID-19. No? So dito sa Pilipinas, because of the outbreak ng COVID-19, ngayon yung mga court, ano na rin, online na rin nag-hearing. No? Kasi meron akong kamag-anak na kasuhan sa Palawan. Hanggang ngayon, nasa kulungan pa rin. Minsan pa lang sila nag-online na, anong tawag dito, online na hearing. No? Okay. So, the case has been considered at a remote meeting. No? Okay. The parties' views on the matter. The appellant is Norske Shell has mainly argued. Ito yung argument ng Shell, no? The Tax Act Section 13-1 does not allow access to discretionary determination, hindi daw allowed, no? Arbitrary assessment, which means that the share of research and development costs covered by Norwegian Shell's licensed partner shall at the same time be included as cost in the distribution within the Shell group based on the SIEP agreement, no? The Board of Appeals decision is based first on an incorrect fact. There is no transactions that transferable tangible or intangible assets that can be valued. So, anong sabi ng Board of Appeals? Anong basis niya? Incorrect fact daw. Kasi there is no transaction that transfers transferable, tangible, or intangible assets that can be valued. Wala naman daw transfer, no? Furthermore, pero para sa akin, cost itong pinag-uusapan eh, no? So, bakit may transfer? Furthermore, the application of the law is incorrect, no? So, question of law. The discretionary valuation is contrary to the arm's length principle in the Tax Act, Section 13-1, and the OECD guidelines, to which Section 13-1, fourth paragraph refers. The cost charged to the licensed partners do not constitute cost to for Norske Shell that will be included in the SIEP distribution. Ang galing ng kanilang argument, no? Alternatively, it can be seen that the contribution from the licensed partners for Norske Shell constitutes income that must be attributed to the cost sharing in the same way as cost and in the same way as other SIEP revenues. The decision also entails an illegal double taxation. No? So yun ang tindi ng mga issue nila. This means that the same income, the cost borne by the licensed partners is taxed twice. No? Bakit daw? Norske Shell has filed the following claim. The tax assessment for Norske Shell for the income years 2007 to 2012 is repealed. No? In the case of new tax assessment, no income shall be determined for AS Norske Shell from the Shell Group for the share of cost for research and development borne by the company's partner in production licenses. Sino yung partners niya kanina? Yung Shell Technologies, no? AS Norske Shell is awarded legal cost for the District Court, the Court of Appeal, and the Supreme Court, no? So sila daw yung in-award yung legal cost na kanila. The respondent, the state, has mainly argued, no? So ito naman yung argument ng state. Ojescat Contoret. Yan yun yung tax authority nila, no? The Board of Appeals' discretion is that the remuneration is determined in the same way as the Shell Group otherwise prices access to results from research and development, namely that the price its individual company must pay is determined as a proportion of the total cost. This discretion is valid, no? Ito naman yung sabi ng tax authority. It is not correct to say that the burden under the accounting agreement means that Norske Shell costs for research and development are actually reduced, and that on this basis there are less costs to be distributed in the Shell Group. The costs for Norske Shell are unaffected both by the burden under the accounting agreement and by the redistribution in the Shell Group, no? So from legal point of view, parang mahina yung argument, no? There is no basis for pricing the benefit received by the other companies in the Shell Group, only the net cost that can be distributed. The aim of the exercise is to assess at discretion what the parties would have agreed on if they were independent. Ipakita mo talaga ano yung nangyari doon sa independent parties. But for all you know, ang exploration, petroleum exploration, wala kang makikitang independent parties, no? Usually, they are done by the related parties, no? So, there is no room in this to reduce the consideration because one of the parties benefits from another transaction. There is no double taxation. Yan ang sabi ng tax authority. The taxation in this case applies to income from various transactions, no? The state versus the tax authority has filed the following claim. The appeal is rejected. No? Sabi nung kalaban, sabi nung tax authority. The state is awarded legal cost before the Supreme Court. Yan ang sabi niya. Okay. So, view on the matter, starting points. By the judgment of the Court of Appeal, it has been legally decided that Norske Shell's research and development activities in Norway have provided benefits to other companies in the Shell Group. Kapag provide siya or benefits has been awarded to other member of the group. And that the Norwegian company, if the group community had not existed, in this context would have demanded remuneration or compensation from the foreign companies. So ano daw dapat? Dapat may compensation ka from the foreign companies, no? So it has thus been decided that there is a basis for determining the income for Norske Shell at the discretion of the Tax Act 13-1. The first paragraph of this provision reads as follows. Determination may be made at discretion if the taxpayer's wealth or income is reduced due to direct or indirect common interest with another person, company, or institution. The Board of Appeals discretion is based on a distribution of the cost of research and development in Norway between the group companies according to the benefit the various companies have had from this activity. According to the tribunal's decision, Norske Shell's access to deductions is limited to the proportion of the cost that are considered to correspond to the benefit for this company. The tribunal is based on the distribution K, no? So ito na. The group itself used for cost covered by the SIEP agreement and has based this on the assumption that Norske Shell's share of the cost amounts to 5 to 6%. As the case stands before the Supreme Court, the use of the distribution K is not in itself a subject of dispute. So hindi naman nila din-dispute yung allocation K, no? Distribution K. So prior to the distribution between the group companies, the majority of the tribunal reduced the cost base by 10%. No? So cost base ng research and development ni-reduce. Yun yung pinaka-adjustment niya, no? Yung 10% reduction. As a result of Norske Shell's research and development being considered to be of somewhat greater value to this company than to the group companies internationally. The size of the reduction is not covered by the case as it stands before the Supreme Court. The question to be decided by the Supreme Court is whether, in calculating the research and development costs that are distributed at discretion to the group companies in other countries, it is permissible to also include costs that on the basis of the accounting agreement are charged to Norwegian Shell's licensed partners with the individual the extraction projects. This makes it necessary for the judge to first go into something about the license cooperation in extraction activities on the Norwegian shelf and the cost coverage within this cooperation, no? So, this is an extractive industry, no? Ito yung mga industries na talagang gaining. The relationship between the operator and other licenses and production licenses on the Norwegian continental shelf, coverage of cost for research and development. Ito na yung maghahanap ka na ng comparables mo and mag-compare ka na ng companies, no? So, extraction of petroleum on the Norwegian continental shelf takes place on the basis of a production license granted by the state in accordance with the rules in the Petroleum Act 3-3. It is common for a production license for a field to be awarded to several licenses jointly. In such cases, one of the licenses shall be designated as operator. No? So the Petroleum Act 3-7. This case concerns cost related to fields where Norske Shell is the operator. No? As mentioned, the relationship between the licenses, which together form a partnership, is regulated by, among other things, the cooperation agreement and the accounting agreement. No? Kasi may mga agreements naman sila eh. So it follows from Article 3.1 of the Cooperation Agreement that the operator shall perform and be responsible for the day-to-day management of the partnership activities. It is further stipulated here that the operator shall not have any profit or loss in the performance of its duties, unless otherwise provided specifically in the cooperation agreement. Pursuant to Article 8.1, all contracting parties are obliged to contribute sufficient sums to cover all expenses arising from the activities of the partnership. The dispute in this case concerns cost for activities which in the accounting agreement are defined as general research and development. No? So yun yung sa accounting. After Article 1.1 letter D is this, projects according to the Norwegian Research Council's definition of research and development carried out by or under the auspices of the operator. The project must be of benefits the upstream operations and be cost charged to the operator. No? So ito yung ginawa nilang legal basis na para hindi ma-allocate dun sa ibang member of the group. No? Ano sabi nila dito? Yung cost charged to the operator. So sino yung operator? The Norski's Shell, no? So the cost of such research and development may, in accordance with further rules in Article 2.2.2 of the accounting agreement, be charged to the so-called joint account and thus to the other licenses according to their share. No? So it must be documented each year that the costs relate to activities that have utility value for the Norwegian continental shelf. In the case, the parties have relied on the fact that about 40% of Norske Shell's cost for general research and development are charged to the other licenses. This means that Norske Shell itself has covered about 60%. No? So yung 40% pinamigay na niya, so 60% yung sa kanya. Yung share niya doon sa research and development cost. No? So the tax rules. The Tax Act, Section 13-1, first paragraph, as the case stands before the Supreme Court, it has, no, as pointed out, been clarified that the basic conditions of the law are met. No? So, na-met naman yung conditions ng law. In that Norske Shell's income is reduced due to common interest with the other group companies. It is thus clear that the Board of Appeal had the right to determine the income at its discretion. No? Hindi naman to discretion without any legal basis. Of course, this is discretion with legal basis. The question before the Supreme Court is whether the appeals board has used its discretion in the correct way, no? When determining the size of the supplement made in Norske Shell's income. The procedure to discretion is regulated in Section 13-1, third paragraph, which reads, at the discretion, wealth or income shall be determined as if there had been no common interest. So it is clear that this concerned international matters, so that Section 13-1, fourth paragraph applies. According to this provision, it shall, in determining whether assets or income have been reduced pursuant to the first paragraph and in determining the discretion of assets or income pursuant to the third paragraph, account shall be taken of transfer pricing guidelines for multinational enterprises and tax authorities adopted by the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development, or the OECD. The fourth paragraph was added by Act Number 72 of 29 June 2007, also in previous Norwegian case law. It was assumed that the OECD's guidelines for transfer pricing were relevant in the interpretation of the Tax Act 13-1. So the amendment was made because it was desirable to give these guidelines a most formal status in Norwegian law. Okay. On page 15 of the proposition, it is also stated that the OECD guidelines are still intended to be indicative and that there are no binding rules. However, it is also stated on page 14 that the guidelines are relevant in the interpretation of Section 13-1. This must mean that the guidelines may be relevant when Section 13-1, third paragraph, is to be given a content as a legal framework for the more discretionary determination of income or cost. Okay. So the court's competence to review the valuation discretion in the Tax Act 13-1, third paragraph, follows the general administrative law rules on decisions that are subject to free discretion. Okay, Norske Shell has argued that the discretion in this case is based on an incorrect factual basis and on incorrect application of law. No? So yun ang argument na Shell. This is within the jurisdiction of the courts. So the Tax Act Section 13-1, third paragraph, expresses the so-called arm's length principle. What one has to find out is how independent parties would have arranged themselves in a similar situation. Point 1.119 of the OECD guidelines emphasizes that a correctly carried out analysis will have identified the substance of the commercial or financial relations between the parties and will have accurately delineated the actual transaction by analyzing the economically relevant characteristics, no? So, may citation siya dito, yung Commissioner of Taxation versus Glencore, no? Point limited. Itong tinignan ko kanina, itong Glencore investment, no, versus Commissioner of Taxation, meron na po tayo, no, si attorney ang nag-discuss. No, so tingnan po ninyo diyan sa video natin. Meron tayo diyan na Glencore case, no? That is about the mining company, no, smelter, no? So ito po yung na-identify nila, no? Okay. So a concrete analysis of the transaction must therefore be made where the K is the aspects of it that are relevant to an economic context, no? So the complaints board legal application. The Board of Appeals decision is based on the fact that the group companies have gained international access to research results obtained through research and development in Norway. This is a division of the results and not a transfer with the effect that Norske Shell relinquishes rights or that the group companies receive some form of exclusive right. No? So, yan ang sinabi ng board. A key starting point for the decision is that the research activity that Norske Shell conducts in Norway shall be treated for tax purposes in the same way as the activity conducted by Shell internationally through the SIEP collaboration. The collaboration is based on a principle of cost sharing. No? So this means that if it is the actual cost without the addition of any kind of profit that are to be shared proportionally between the group companies based on the individual companies' benefits. No? Siyempre, kung may contribution ka, the contribution will be compensated with the benefits, no? So the Board of Appeals decision must be understood as accepting that the SIEP cooperation has been established in a way that meets the requirements for arm's length, no? So in intragroup documents entitled Operating Module Documentation, the cost sharing within the SIEP collaboration is described as follows. No? So ito naman yung description nila nung intragroup documents. So the operating model operates within the context of a cost-sharing system, where services are made available at cost without any element of profit and shared proportionally amongst each of the companies benefiting from the activities for which the costs were incurred. It further follows from the group's regulation that in the calculation of cost, deductions must be made for income obtained in connection with the research and development activities. This is expressed as follows, no? So from the said cost shall be deducted all such amounts as in the year concerned shall have been received by SIEP in consideration of the granting of any licenses or other rights of use in respect of patented and unpatented technical knowledge and information in the said fields. So in the bill in connection with the addition of the Tax Act, Section 13-1, fourth paragraph in 2007, no? The ministry reviewed the content of the OECD's guidelines for transfer pricing. In the proposition section 5.9, the guidelines related to cost contribution schemes, KBO, are explained. No? In the guidelines themselves referred to as cost contribution arrangement. No? So itong case na to, research and development, deals with the cost contribution arrangement of the Shell Group. No? The content of such scheme is described as follows. A KBO is a contractual framework for sharing costs and risks associated with the development, production, or acquisition of assets, services, or rights. No? So the participants seek to achieve unexpected benefit, expected hindi unexpected, achieve an unexpected benefit through their contributions to the KBO. During a KBO, each individual participant will have the right to utilize their interest in the KBO who actually owns them. No? And the participant shall thus not answer royalties or other remuneration to any other party for the utilization of their interest in the scheme. The most common KBOs are schemes for joint development of intangible assets, but KBOs are also established for other purposes. Ano tong KBOs na to? Ito yung cost contribution scheme. No? Okay. Ilan pa yung viewers natin?
6 viewers.
Okay. So as I see it, it is in good accordance with the arm's length principle that follows from the Tax Act 13-1 and the OECD guidelines when the appeals board in its decision has taken as a starting point that the relationship between Norske Shell and the group companies involves a cost-sharing scheme. There is no transfer of values here for a consideration that is to be determined on the basis of the commercial principles that will apply to an ordinary sale of goods, services, or rights. The starting point means that the tax authority's exercise of discretion must follow the principles for cost contribution schemes that can be deduced from the Tax Act, Section 13-1, interpreted in the light of the OECD guidelines. The guidelines, Section 8.12, states the following about how the arm's length principle should be applied in such a context. So for the conditions of a CACA to satisfy the arm's length principle, the value of participants' contributions must be consistent with what independent enterprises would have agreed to contribute under comparable circumstances, given their proportionate share of the total anticipated benefits they reasonably expect to derive from the arrangement. The decisive factor is thus also here what contribution would have been agreed between independent parties, but then taking into account what advantage the recipient can actually expect to obtain through the scheme in question. This is described in the same way. So in its decision, the appeals board states the following about the importance of a share of Norske Shell's cost for research and development being charged to the licensed partners. So ano yung point nila dito? Yung cost of the research and development charged to the other partner and not only to Norske Shell, no? Kaya lumiit yung income ni Norske Shell. So based on what have been pointed out, the appeal board has not taken a correct legal starting point here. What the tribunal states must naturally be understood as meaning that it actually believes that a transaction has taken place, a sale, no, in the relationship between Norske Shell and the corporation abroad. The right thing would be to build on the fact that there is an agreement that entails a cost contribution scheme. A correct application of the arm's length principle means that one must consider what the shell companies abroad, as part of a cost contribution scheme between independent parties, would agree to provide, taking into account the advantage they expect to achieve through access to the results from the R&D activities. So in Norway, as I see it, the right thing to do then would be to build on what is actually the cost burden for Norske Shell. This means that costs covered by others should not be included. So it may not matter whether the cost coverage achieved through the burden of the licensed partners, seen from Norske Shell's point of view, appears as a cost sharing or more as a payment for access to the results from research and development projects. The decisive factor will in any case be that in the relationship between Norske Shell and the shell companies abroad. No? So it is a question of a cost contribution scheme, which means that it is the actual cost for Norske Shell that are to be distributed based on the company's proportionate benefit. Siyempre, if you benefit from the project or for the program, then you have to pay also the cost or compensate the benefits. In this context, the share of the cost of research and development projects charged to the licensed partners cannot be regarded as a cost for Norske Shell. Hindi daw cost yun ng Norske Shell. So following this, the conclusion, the appeals board decision is based on an incorrect understanding in the arm's length principle as this follows from the Tax Act, Section 13-1 and the OECD guidelines. The appeals board decision must then be revoked. No? It follows from what I have pointed out that in the tribunal's new processing, the share of cost for research and development that is charged to Norske Shell's licensed partners cannot be included in the income that is to be determined by discretion. The verdict can thus be formulated on the basis of Norske Shell's claim. No? So in this case naman, panig sila on the side sila ng Shell. No? So legal cost. Throughout the case, Norske Shell has argued, also in the appeal to the Supreme Court, that there was no basis at all for applying the Tax Act, Section 13-1 in this case. The result that is available after the Supreme Court's ruling is that it is permissible to make a discretionary income determination, but that the income must be set lower than in the appeals board's decision. This means that none of the parties to the case has been upheld in full or in substance. No? Both parties have been upheld of significance. The Disputes Act, Section 20-3. However, I see no reason for any of them to be awarded cost before the District Court or the Court of Appeal. So in the processing before the Supreme Court in the department, the case has been limited to the question of whether the proportion of the cost charged to the licensed partners will be included in the discretionary income determination. At this point, Norske Shell has prevailed. No? There are then compelling reasons which indicate that Norske Shell should in part be awarded cost before the Supreme Court. No? The Dispute Act, Section 20-3. In my view, Norske Shell should be reimbursed for the necessary costs that have been incurred after the referral decision was available, and also the court fee. For work after the submission of the Declaration of Appeal, a fee of a total of Norwegian krone 378,505 is required. Cost amount to Norwegian krone 21,396, and the court fee is Norwegian krone 31,050. A total of Norwegian krone 430,951 will then be awarded. No? So, sa ano sabi niya dito, I am voting in favor of this, sabi ng judge. So, the judgment, the ruling from the Appeals Board for Petroleum Tax on 12 December 2016 is revoked. No? Kasi panalo dito ang tax authority. So, pagdating na sa Supreme Court, panalo na yung Shell. Is revoked. In the case of a new tax assessment income for Norske Shell from other companies in the Shell Group shall not be determined for the proportion of research and development cost borne by the company's partners in production licenses. No? Cost for the District Court and the Court of Appeal are not awarded. No? So the legal cost between the Supreme Court, the state pays 430,951. No? Yung state ha, yung tax authority. Kroner to is Norske Shell within 2 weeks from the announcement of the judgment. So pagdating sa Supreme Court, si tax authority pa yung nagbayad ng lahat ng cost at saka yung legal cost, no? Judge Arntzen, I essentially and in the result agree with the first voter, no? So lahat sila in favor sila in favor sila na kay Norske Shell, no? Judgment, the ruling from the Appeals Board for Petroleum Tax on 12 December 2016 is revoked. In the case of a new tax assessment, income for Norske Shell from other companies in the Shell Group shall not be determined for the proportion of research and development cost borne by the company's partners in production licenses. Cost for the direct District Court and the Court of Appeal are not awarded. So, hindi rin award. In legal cost between the Supreme Court, the state pays 430,951, no? Kroner to AS Norske Shell within 2 weeks from the announcement of the agreement. So, anong nangyari dito? Talo yung tax authority, panalo yung Shell. ano yung kanilang argument dito na very specific sila doon sa mga definition ng income at saka yung doon sa cost contribution arrangement. Kaya nga sabi ko nga sa inyo, sa presentation of facts, dapat maganda na. Kaya nga ang ginagawa kong transfer pricing analysis such that na meron ng presentation of facts as ang naiintindihan na, no? Ang constraint ko lang when I do transfer pricing analysis, yung availability of the information na usually hindi binibigay nung client, no? May iba-iba silang reasons na confidential daw o kaya ayaw din nilang ipakita, no? So in that case, very limited lang din yung basis mo for the formation of your opinion, no? So kung ano lang yung available, doon ka lang magbabase ng opinion mo. Okay? So ilang oras na, Hari?
1 hour 53 minutes.
Okay, so 53 minutes pa. So let's continue with our discussions. Dito sa case na to, sa Norske Shelton, no, versus Norwegian Supreme Court, nag-major sila dito sa citation ng case ng Commissioner of Taxation versus Glencore Investment Point Limited, no? So tingnan natin ano ba yung case ng Glencore, no? Hanapin natin. Ito ba yun, Hari? Ito ba yung binigay mo kanina?
Ako, ma'am. Glencore.
Okay. So ito po yung case na may citation kanina. Yung case ng Australia versus Glencore. No, this is about the case of Glencore. This is an Australian company, situated in situated po siya sa Australia. At ano yung functions niya? Sa exploration din, no? Okay. Okay, so ito yung issue ng Glencore, no? Ano ba yung Glencore para maintindihan natin? No? Ano ba yung Glencore? Glencore is an Australian company also that deals with the exploration din or extraction din ng case ng mineral products, no? Okay. So ito yung taxpayer, yung Glencore, appealed. Ano yung inappeal niya dito? On the decision made by the respondent, ito yung ATO or the Australian Tax Authority Commissioner, disallowing the taxpayer objection to amended assessment issued to it. At nung case naman to, 2007, 2008, 2009, no? The taxpayer was assessed the head of multiple entry consolidated group for Australian tax purposes, of which COBAR management, ito yung mga related parties, no, involved in the transactions. Okay. Ito yung pagbenta naman, the sale of the copper concentrate, no? Dati, nang maliliit pa kami, we also stay in the mining company, no? Yung, at that time, ano pa siya, Cabaros mining companies, tapos later on changed into Marinduque Mining, no, in the companies. Sila din yung nagpo-produce or nag-extract ng mga copper dito sa Pilipinas. No, so what happened? Ito yung mga copper concentrate was priced in the relevant years, no? And then all of a sudden, pumasok sila sa isang kontrata na nag-fix na yung kanilang pricing, no? So dinisallow yun ng tax court na sabi na, bakit maganda na yung presyo ng product mo, nag-agree ka pa na doon sa agreement mo, mababa na yung benta mo ng copper concentrate, no? Okay. Actually, isa sa mga issues dito yung expert witness, no? Kaya nga dito ko rin na discover ano ba talaga yung role ng expert witness because I have been ano din noon invited to become an expert witness, no, about bookkeeping naman yun, about accounting entries. Okay. So in this case, sino naman yung panalo dito? Panalo pa rin dito yung Glencore, no? Basta maganda yung argument mo and then very specific ka, lalo yung kaso mo, no? Okay. Okay. So, yun yung mga cases dito, no? So, anong nangyari dito sa case na to? Okay. Parang, kasi citation siya ng Norske shell eh. So, it's about cost sharing, no? So, dito, transfer pricing appeal from objection decision of Commissioner of Taxation amended assessment raised pursuant to Division 13 of Income Tax Assessment Act, no? So, related party international dealing, non-arm's length dealing for the purpose of Division 13 for the purposes of Subdivision 815A. Conditions operating between two enterprises and their commercial and financial relations differing from those which might be expected to operate between the independent enterprises dealing wholly independently, no? Kaya nga pag compare na tayo, dapat dealing wholly independently. Hindi pwede yung related parties i-compare mo rin with another related party, no? Whether profits did not accrue, which might have been expected to accrue, but for non-arm's length conditions, contract structured as price sharing agreement, no? So price sharing naman, kanina cost contribution arrangement. Dito price sharing agreement, adjustments made by commissioner based on a hypothesis of market-related contract, no? Ano to mga market-related contract? Yung same treatment, no? In that same area of services or product, no? Whether permissible to restructure contract as market-related contract for the purposes of applying transfer pricing provisions. Identification of a hypothetical transaction for comparative analysis, no? Recognition of the actual transactions undertaken, no warrant to restructure agreement. Price sharing and quotational period terms in comparable transactions between independent parties. Price sharing percentage within an arm's length range. No discount required for quotational period. Optionality, back pricing term. Onus of proof disregarded, no? Special allowed. So, yan yung sa case naman ng Glencore investment. No? Okay. So, anong oras na?
2 hours, 2 minutes.
Okay. So, I would like to remind sa Wednesday natin na discussion, we will discuss about the valuation of intangibles and the presentation of, maglalagay tayo rin ng mga examples sa kanila on how to present intangibles in your financial statements and how to disclose intangibles. And maghanap tayo ng cases na ang application niya is intangibles. Also, although, ang sabi ko sa inyo that there are so many cases now in transfer pricing that involves intangibles. That's why if you are a manufacturing company, if you are a distribution company, nagdi-distribute ng mga branded na goods, no? Be sure na meron kayong report na intangibles in your balance sheet and also meron kayong disclosures, no? or you claim also amortized or depreciation cost in your income statement. Why? Because it is very, very important. Pagka walang intangibles reflected or reported in your financial statements, but in real life, no, you are a manufacturing company, you have patent, you have registered licenses, then your financial statement are misrepresented, no? You will be penalized by the SEC, and you will be required to amend your financial statements. No? Kasi mali siya. Okay, so may shout out pa? So with that, I would like to say thank you very much for all our viewers. Thank you sa mga subscribers natin. Nilagay mo na dyan na free yung ating pagbigay sa kanilang libro. Mag-ano na lang sila through their address, ipadala natin. Pero yung delivery charges, charge na po sa inyo. Okay. So I would like to say thank you and let's call it a night.